Previously on the SoJo Files.
And she confirmed our suspicion that it was clearly not a continuous EKG strip and that it appeared that something had been cut out of the middle in some way by someone. And that was obviously very concerning.
When we went, and Chris and I and Billy Turnbow and his assistant sat in the Van Buren evidence room and opened and photographed everything in preparation for trial, that's when we saw an actual EKG strip in plastic that had a spike on it. That wasn't the first time in this case that we went, what the hell is going on?
I mean, I think we realized something was up, but we didn't know exactly what. Like, it could, right, this could be folded and just, it could be straight all the way across.
And it doesn't really matter the rest of it. That there are two, that they're not the same, and that both exist, right? And only one is in evidence. That's it, really, from an analysis standpoint.
On this week's episode of the SoJo Files, Chad Atwell, Laura Carwile, and myself are going to be taking a closer look and diving into another critical piece of evidence that was collected November 8th, 2018, and that is the cutting they took from the couch. Now, just a quick refresher for anyone who might need it. In the living room of 2210 Granite Circle, which is where this homicide occurred, there is a couch. And you heard the couch being mentioned several times throughout the interrogation tapes by both Jordan as well as Eva. Regardless of who you want to believe and what version of events you want to believe, at some point in time, Olivia was placed onto the couch in the living room, which then transferred her blood onto one of the couch cushions. Of course, during Jordan's interrogation, he mentions that after he called 911 the first time, he approached Eva, holding Olivia, by the couch, and that when he approached, there was already blood, he noticed, on the couch. And I think that that implies something of great significance. But we are going to dive into the blood on the couch and how it was collected into evidence. And according to the chain of custody, it is known as the piece of fabric from the couch, evidence number 35. So let's dive into it. I'm going to let Laura Carwile get us started off with some of the issues with this piece of evidence and how it was collected because, spoiler alert, there's literally going to be an issue with every single piece of evidence and how it was collected in this case. So, Laura, why don't you get us going?
So we don't have information on who cut this out, how it was cut out, or information on the procedure that was used to cut it out. Did the person who cut it out use box cutters or scissors, or some tool they found on scene that was in a drawer somewhere? Did they have gloves on? I mean, there's about a million things that we don't have. But also, it could have been any one of these people. They did not appear to have procedures they followed in terms of the collection of biological evidence. It could have been, I mean, genuinely, I could guess that anyone who walked in the house that day could have been the person who cut this out. I don't know. That is, again, just like all the evidence collection done on November 8th, absolutely outrageous. This is blood found at a crime scene where someone has died. Why is this not being treated with the utmost importance and being collected as if it were important evidence in the case?
They also didn't collect the couch cushion. They only collected the top layer of fabric from that one section of that couch cushion, and that's it. And they don't record who collected it. I know that we've already covered this in previous podcast episodes, but just to reiterate, in Wesley Marsh's incident report for November 8th, 2018, he only mentions that the section of the couch with blood on it was taken if further analysis was needed, but he does not specify who collected it whatsoever at all. Yet, contrary to that, is the chain of custody, which clearly says that Officer Marsh is the officer who collected the fabric from the couch. But you would think that more than just that top layer of fabric from that one little section of that particular cushion would be of relevance and value in a homicide investigation, as well as knowing who specifically collected it and, like Laura said, how they collected it. That's all relevant.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard for me to understand what the fuck they did do that's even close. I mean, I've got aunts and uncles that would have done a better job at this crime scene that have never seen a crime scene. Look, SoJo, if I handed you a kite, okay, and we went up in a plane, would you jump out believing that kite would save you like a parachute?
I wouldn't jump out with a parachute and $1 million guarantee.
Okay, well, the point here is that one backfired on me, but just because we called a crime scene investigation, right, doesn't make it so. If a cat has kittens in the oven, it doesn't make them biscuits. They're still kittens. They're not biscuits. So we don't know who collected what when, right? Or anything else. What we do know is that instead of taking a cushion, or the cover, by the way, these had zippers on them. Let's just call it like it is. Someone's a dumbass. And by that I mean more than one someone's a dumbass. They're zippered cushions. At my house, right? Our shit came from IKEA because it's cheap. And so, like, we have kids and we have a new puppy. And so we take them off. We unzip them. And we throw them in the washer and put them back on. But nope. Let's just cut a big old circle. I have another question that's never going to be answered. Laura, I see your face, but hold on. I'm riffing, and it wasn't over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. But what did they put down on top of the blood to cut a circle? Because that's not a report either, right? Did they put something down that contaminated it and then take a razor and cut around this, but somehow not cut the plastic underneath the cloth material?
But why would you not cut a fucking square?
Why would you not take the cushion cover off and put it in a bag? Why the fuck would you not do that?
Why didn't they take the cushion? Do they not have enough room in Arkansas to store a cushion and evidence somewhere?
I was trying to take into account the idea that maybe someone had people in the back seat, like they arrested the folks from Long John Silver's that they never interviewed, and the reason they didn't is because they had them in the back of the cop car, so maybe they didn't have room for the whole cushion in the car, right? Maybe, because look, I don't know, Laura, I'm crazy, but maybe it's important if the amount of blood that went through cloth then made its way onto plastic, and then made its way, if there's not plastic, see, I'm not going to do spoilers like Laura Carwile, but then did it go into a cushion, and if so, how far? That seems to indicate to me, and I haven't had their training, but someone was bleeding. Now, how long were they on there? Because how long were they on that spot in the house is incredibly important as compared to other people's stories.
I have another question for you. Was it possible that other parts of the couch had trace amounts of blood on them? Or some other biological fluid on them? Is it possible that someone tried to clean one of the parts of the couch and didn't get to this part? Is it possible that if I see blood on a couch at a crime scene where someone has died, there may be other relevant evidence nearby that I should test for at a lab? Why am I just cutting out a circle of a part of a couch where blood is in a procedure where, to Chad's point, could in no way be verified to be accurate or scientifically sound? And I'm leaving what could be important evidence around it. I don't even know why they decided to do this at all. It makes genuinely no sense. I can't even wrap my head around the decision someone made here.
Well, there's clear.
Do we think they did it on the...
Too, by the way.
Sorry, yes. Agreed, SoJo. Agreed. Do we think they did it the first time they were out on the 8th, though? Or after all of law enforcement left, a crime scene log was fucking shredded by Chase DeCrew, and then law enforcement came back? Which period of time that we, A, know happened? This is not a guess. And B, which period of time do we think that they fucking lied about? That's it. That's my question.
I do know that for sure the fabric from the couch was collected November 8th, 2018, and I know that because Detective Marsh called Pam Shreeve. Keep in mind that he is calling Pam Shreeve, which means Jordan is the father of her daughter and Jim Shreeve is the grandfather of her daughter. So this is her family. And he calls her and he's being very vague, and she's obviously hysterical and extremely worried about the well-being of the father and grandfather of her daughter. And well, I'll just let you hear a clip.
Hello? Hey, Pam. Hey, this is Detective Marsh. I'm with Van Buren Police Department.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I got a couple questions to ask you if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Hey, have you talked to Jordan at all today?
I have.
Okay. Can you kind of walk me through? Okay.
What's wrong? Something's not right. I can feel it.
Yeah. We're investigating a incident that happened at I guess him and his new wife's house, and we're just trying to get a timeline of everything that's happened.
What happened?
There was a death there. So,
Who was it? Jordan?
no, it wasn't.
Please.
But anyway, right now,
What?
what I
What?
really,
Who died?
just hold on one second, okay?
Anyway, so you just heard a clip of that phone call, and he calls Pam and obviously scares her half to death, saying that there's a death at the house. He won't give her any details, and she's concerned about the father and grandfather of her daughter. And she actually left work to go to 2210 Granite Circle to see what was going on. And she was able to walk right into the home because nobody was blocking it off. There was no crime scene tape up at that point, and she was able to just freely enter the home. And she walked around the house, and she noticed that the section of that couch cushion had been cut out. So we can verify for sure that on November 8th, they did cut that section of the couch cushion out to take into evidence. But yeah, she was just able to walk right into the house and walk around, no big deal. And then from there, she obviously went to the police station, and you saw the rest on the interrogation tapes. But we can confirm that, yes, that couch cushion cutting was taken on November 8th, 2018.
That's cool. That's A, not in a report. B, allegedly, right? It was still a crime scene. C, we know that's a fucking lie. We know that what they printed off, I'm doing this with reports because they're bullshit, right? We know the times they put in here. They were typed up, maybe from 2 handwritten logs. Because Scotty Wooten and Chris Carwile and I will argue about this in a later episode. Scotty Wooten makes it sound like there were 2 handwritten logs of who went in the house that day, and both of them were destroyed. But by God, military man Chase DeCruz said unequivocally, I fucking shredded it. It doesn't exist. So all that will ever exist
Is the version that they want us and the public to know and have.
is whatever version they want us to have, which they didn't even line up correctly with the video, by the way, or the photographs. Everybody's Gone by Van Buren PDs. I'm holding this up for no one that's here, I guess, because I'm a ham when I get on a riff. But by 3:15, everybody is gone. They're gone. Except we have like 50 photographs after 3:15 on scene. Pam was in there.
She was in there sometime around 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
There were other people that have things to say about after 3:15, right? Here's what I'll tell you. As I drop this report, and I'm getting actually angry, is that what me and Chris and Laura knew by the time this thing teed off is that people were lying. And what we knew and could, prove in my sort of ridiculously over the top, don't use that word if it's not correct way, is what we could prove people lied about. The really shitty part about it is none of it helped to explain to a jury that Jordan didn't do this, and we put it all back here on the shelf, right? Like, there are significant questions. Look, at a bare minimum, I'll say this, and I'm not going to go further, SoJo, I promise. I promise I won't go further than this. But if your listeners had the capability at this point in time to take the photographs that allege to be from the crime scene, right? And they had the benefit sworn trial testimony, and I'm not going to go further than that. The crime scene was staged. Full stop.
The crime and the crime scene do not make sense. You can't make it math. It makes no sense.
Well, now that's different than what I said. What I said was
You're saying it's staged.
the crime scene was a creation by people. It was in no way an organic thing that happened and someone investigated it. And that is going to be somewhat of a cliffhanger, but that's a fact.
None of it makes sense, but on this couch, Marsh doesn't claim to be the one that collected it. He says that a piece was collected, but he just leaves it at that.
It's covered elsewhere in there, right? So, like, somebody says they collected it.
The section of the couch cushion that was collected was taken if further analysis was needed. Not a word about who actually collected it, but on the chain of custody, it does say that Marsh is the one that collected it. Make it make sense. I would love for someone to make it make sense. But the only way that you can make this make sense is if you think that it is not incompetence, it is something more, and that is the only way that you can make it make fucking sense.
Well, that makes sense.
He probably did cut it out, though. Wesley Marsh was all up in the biological evidence collection in ways that were inappropriate. He probably decided to cut out that part of the couch. I mean, now that we're talking about this, I'm not over how stupid it was to cut it out like that.
They don't bother to mention who took the swab from the couch cushion either.
Wait, hold on. Can I pause you for just a second? Seriously, like, because I have problems with shit, and we know this. Like, my brain broke, right? But so they cut out a circle from the couch cushion. I can't even dive into Laura's point about trace evidence and blood elsewhere on the couch because the pictures are so fucked up. And that is also not our opinion, but also per at least two experts who have invested. But so they cut this out of the couch, but then also they swabbed. Did they swab the little circle they cut out? And did they send that to the crime lab? And are these packaged together or are they sent separately? Please, SoJo, please tell me how that worked.
A swab was taken, and then the couch cushion was cut out. Now, I cannot help with the absolute fuckery.
Your listeners can't see Laura Carwile's face, but by the way, Laura, I miss your face in person a lot and your facial expressions. And your brothers, by the way, but when they call bullshit, man, like, they're like eyeballs say bullshit. And she's doing it.
I just, these people supposedly took a Mickey Mouse doll and a Razorback pillow and took God knows what else at random from this crime scene. And they didn't take the cushion that had blood on it.
They didn't even bother to collect the fucking pack and play, which, given the statements from the victim's mother, you would think would be one key, critical, absolutely must have to have piece of evidence.
Like, am I missing something?
They didn't take anything that semi-mattered.
Again, I mean, I guess I am missing something because these are the same people who never opened the door to the garage in this house during November 8th, at least that they would admit to, or ever told us that they ever wrote in a report that these same officers didn't open the door and go into the garage during their investigation. So maybe it's the same set of officers who would cut a tiny little part of the couch off and not take the rest of it.
I'm going to jump in here because we all know that I'm super conservative about my words and I don't want you to say something libelous or slanderous. I don't know the difference, but if you could send me the difference in an email, then I can be better next time. But I mean, look, these lying assholes, many of them said they went in the garage through the walk door through the house. But what they said is during the course of their investigation for potentially the weapon that inflicted blunt force head trauma on little 2-year-old Olivia, that they didn't fucking take a picture, document it, or photograph it. Let's be precise, Laura. Can we loop that?
I'll put that on loop just for you. Let's go ahead and loop that audio back one more time just for Chad.
I mean, look, these lying assholes, many of them said they went in the garage through the walk door through the house. But what they said is during the course of their investigation for potentially the weapon that inflicted blunt force head trauma on little 2-year-old Olivia, that they didn't fucking take a picture, document it, or photograph it. Let's be precise, Laura. But right November the 9th, Wesley Marsh said yet more crazy shit. And I know we're off script, but I don't give a shit at this point. Also, super angry. Still, I don't know if y'all can tell I have issues, but Wesley Marsh, hey, Were you looking for a weapon? Yeah, maybe. Were you blah, blah, blah? Yeah, when you went back on the 9th, when you gave Judge Baker a search warrant that left out most of the facts that you should include in a search warrant, including the fact that you were there for a lying amount of time, if that's a unit of measurement, a lying amount of time on the 8th, right? So, what'd you find in the garage on the 9th? Fuck if I know. Fuck if I know. I have no idea.
I found a picture of the garage online. It was from Zillow or some shit, but that's still to this day the only picture of the garage that I've ever seen.
Zillow is Van Buren Police Department's new CSI.
And I found that picture online, and it was like a year ago, and I was looking for it because they kept bringing up the garage. And as many times as they brought it up, I figured there would be a picture of it in evidence, but there wasn't, and so I was doing a little online sleuthing and stumbled across it, which, by the way, this is your couch cushion piece.
But who the hell knows what happened to this couch cushion piece? Okay, so we start November the 8th, right? We know that the time in is bullshit. And by that, I mean, there are officers who do it legitimately. I put a thing to the Van Buren evidence tech, Chrissy Davidson, and on that day I say submit, right? Mm-hmm. That's fair. But we know that they can punch that from anywhere. So it's submitted by Wesley Marsh on November the 13th. So Monday's the 12th. I believe Tuesday's the 13th. Laura will tell me immediately if that's wrong. But
quick reminder that Detective Marsh never admitted to collecting it. He's just on the chain of custody as the one who did.
Which is fascinating because let's say that he didn't collect it. He's going to have to testify about it. So if Chad Atwell collected this from a homeless guy down the street who had just been fishing out of a sewer ditch, right, and came up with a circular piece of cushion, well, I think you'd want to document that, right, if you're going to prosecute somebody for murder. But Wesley Marsh did not do that, and it wasn't accepted into evidence until November the 29th, which, best we can tell, look, it is the first time that it actually went through the one-way lockers at the Van Buren PD, meaning the officer couldn't take it back out. So it wasn't until 3 weeks later. I don't give a shit when it says submitted, by the way. And all testimony later on, spoiler alert, but we're going to do it now. All testimony about when it's submitted is a bullshit number. It means nothing to fucking anybody. It could be still at Laura Carwile's house, and I can be in Van Buren. I can click E37 or 36, black iPhone. I can click in their software, submit. This number is then generated and says submit to evidence. It's fucking worthless. It's less than that. It's a waste of time. Skip this, software people. Take this out for the purposes of prosecution, because by God, it's important, right? I'd love to see the person who murdered Eva, prosecuted for this crime, because my daughter was and is the same age that Olivia would be. Take out this bullshit. It was accepted. So what we know is Chrissy Davidson got these items in on the dates they say accepted. That's the best we can say. It's the very best we can say. Why would someone click submit? This case is full of questions. It always has been. Why would an officer click submit, Laura Carwile? Why would an officer click submit 2 weeks? I don't care what the item is, but why would they click submit 2 weeks before it's ever actually crossing the threshold?
Well, real quick before Laura answers that, it's stupid to say on the 13th.
Agreed.
Okay, like if you're bullshitting, go on the fucking 8th and bullshit your thing right then. And make it seem like you put it there on the 8th because you fucking should have.
Well, and to your point about you should have, this is biological evidence. There's this case is so screwy and has so many holes that we understandably forget the bread and butter of criminal investigation. But we're talking about biological evidence. It has to be handled in a certain way. It has to be collected in a certain way. It has to be stored in a certain way. Storing it in Wesley Marsh's desk for 3 weeks is not an appropriate way to store blood evidence. I get it. People make mistakes. Not everything is perfect. But this is biological evidence from a murder of a 2-year-old. why is it being, even if it was put in evidence on the 13th, that's 5 days after it was supposedly collected. What has happened to it for those 5 days? Where was it?
And why was it there in the first place? Where was that evidence sitting for 5 fucking days? I've said this to y'all a million times, and I'm sure I'll say it a million more, but there is simply no way that anyone is going to be able to convince me that Christy Davidson, whose entire job at the Van Buren Police Department is to check in evidence, is going to just flat out not check the intake of evidence for days and weeks on end. I'm never going to buy that. That woman probably checks every day with the exception of her 2 days off.
She does.
There is simply no way that this woman did not check evidence from the 13th until the 29th. There's no way. And look, we're not even talking about one piece of evidence because, okay, maybe you'd be willing to try to rationalize one piece. We're talking about something like 20 pieces of evidence. So absolutely full stop, no. She did not check over 20 pieces of evidence sitting in a locker to be taken into evidence for over 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
You're 100% right.
That, to me, tells me that there is simply no way that that evidence was legitimately put into the one-way locker on November 13th, 2018. Because if it had indeed been put into the one-way locker on the 13th, there's no way that Christy Davidson would have missed it. And not only this piece, I'm talking about all the other pieces that are dated as the 13th, that Christy Davidson would have missed them for over 2 weeks at work. There's no way. So, you should never lie. You should have ethics and morals when you're doing this job, but we've far surpassed that here. So if you're going to lie about the date that something was submitted into the one-way locker in evidence, at least lie and say it's the date that it should have been fucking collected and put into evidence. And not on the 13th, which means that you either let it sit in your car or God knows where for several days, or that you didn't actually even go get it until the 13th when you had no business being back at 2210 Granite Circle.
I'm going to do this for 40 seconds. We'll give the benefit of the doubt to the people who made software that's beyond the officers. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. After that, somebody intentionally sat at a computer terminal and fucking hit submit. Now, look, I've been there. It's this big square. Rectangle. Left side is evidence holding. Christy Davidson and one other person in the whole department have a key. That's it. Right side, brick wall, big table, paper sacks, labels. Paper sack, put things in. Labels, put name on. Sign Sharpies. Pretty simple. Caveman do it. Third door, other than entrance door. What I'm told, what I've been inside, CID evidence room. CID evidence room is right next to the fucking submit thing. It's right next to the table thing. And it's where, I'll guarantee you, and if a captain, lieutenant, or otherwise wants to come on here or have a conversation about it, I promise you, half of this shit went in, quote, CID evidence room, where things like, because sometimes in fairness, and I'm doing this because I am fair, by God, which is like wet evidence, right? So like, let's say that the comforter is soaking wet on the master bedroom, which is where everybody says, or where, not everybody, but where Eva says she died, right? Like that doesn't need to go into a paper or a plastic bag. It needs to dry out. And then it needs to go to crime lab, and then serology needs a crack at it. So it is a room for things that are not prepared or ready to go to crime lab. You don't want to put a soaking wet, pair of shoes in a paper or plastic bag. You don't want to put them in a plastic bag because that destroys biological evidence. And you don't want to put them in a paper bag because they're soaking wet and it's going to fall through and your evidence is screwed. So you do want them to dry. There are circumstances in which you do want items of evidence to dry out primarily, is what I'll tell you is the best idea. But what I also tell you is I'm guessing that most of the things from this case, other than like 1 through 5, went in that room. And then they kind of sorted out, and then they, played some games of Uno, and then they fucked around and played Slapjack, and then they decided, like, who we going to charge, and, it ended up being Jordan.
Ugh, the fuckery with the Shreeve case is never ending, and we are only just getting started. That concludes our episode for the Fabric from the Couch, collected November 8th, 2018, and we will see you all next week.